Had a busy day yesterday. In case you have not heard, and if you know Don Henson, and if you don't remember Don Henson, then you've never met him, okay? That's just all there is to it. He wears a hat. Most people know him as the hat guy. And he's usually got a black, kind of a fedora-shaped hat. And he plays guitar. He's one of my guitar buddies, and we played together at the Howler Building for pancake breakfasts and stuff like that, and played together for National Day of Prayer down there at that little park. And he's got that incredibly awesome Moss-Wright guitar, vintage from the 60s, and I'm hoping if we're good enough friends, I can inherit it someday. But anyways, gotta be nice to him. In case you didn't know, his wife passed away a week ago today. I don't think she was terminally ill that I know of, but she had a sudden heart attack after they went out to eat. And so all of a sudden it was CPR and it was calling ambulances and everything else. Now, if you know, I went to the funeral yesterday at 10, and of course, having lost my own father back in November, I felt some sympathy. He pointed out every preacher in the room because he's friends with all of us preachers, and asked us all to come up and share. Well, I didn't hardly know his wife at all, really. I just know him. And so I waited to be the last guy, and I really only went up there because he had asked me, he had mentioned Be My Dame, and I didn't want to let him down. But so I shared a little bit about what it means to have lost my father and how I have a hope for the future, that he is there in heaven. He is with the Lord, and we can debate over what form that is. He and I even had a little debate one time, my father and I, about what exactly that meant. But definitely, when the trumpet sounds, our bodies will be resurrected. Amen. And I do believe that when we die, before that happens, we go to be with the Lord in some sort of way. That's what the Bible says, because to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. But then someday it sounds like our bodies will join us, and we will be human beings, although a different kind of human being, because Jesus was exactly the same person when he rose from the dead, but he does these weird things where he appears out of thin air, but he's still got the nail scars. So it's the same body, but it's a different body. That's a lot to think about. So this morning, and then we went last night, and went to my baby cousin's wedding. So it was a celebration of life and the things moving on in life, on top of my friend losing his marriage partner of 56 years. And so we are talking about death today because we are also, once again, talking about resurrection. Now, anytime you preach a series, there's going to be someone who thinks that you talk about the same thing every Sunday. And I just would like to say to that person, yes, you're sinful. Jesus died on the cross to pay for your sin. And your guilt and your shame and even the future fear of death can all be washed away in the blood of Jesus, and you will be a brand new creature. It's been the same thing every Sunday for 2,000 years, folks, okay? And we will preach it until you get it, all right? All right, I'm in a heck of a mood today, apparently. We will be at the end of John chapter 20. As I've shared with you before, well, that was new. I must have got a message on Facebook. No, wait. Do what? Because we're on my hotspot. The sound comes over the thing. Oh, well, whatever. When someone near you dies, it leaves a big hole. And that's what I remember the most and know the most about losing my father back in November. If you've lost a parent, perhaps this was something that you can share with too. Today we're going to get into how John talks about the resurrection, and it's very personal. It's very personal. we've seen in other Gospels how there is one chapter at the end of the Gospel dedicated to, they went to the tomb, they found him alive, they spread the news, and Jesus showed up in person, taught them many things, and said, spread this news to the whole world. There's some version of that at the end of Matthew and Mark and Luke. And there are some personal stories, like the two disciples who were discussing everything that had happened and met a stranger on the road on their way to Emmaus. And the stranger on the road explained everything even better. And they didn't realize it was Jesus till he blessed the food. So remember to bless the food, okay? But today we're going to get, well, actually, we're not going to get to them all. We're going to break this up. Everybody just breathe a sigh of relief. We're going to break up the many stories at the end of John, but very personal stories, very gut-wrenching. You can identify with these people. And so I don't bring up my dad's passing in order to bring down the moment, but just think about what kind of hole does it leave in your life? Well, my grandfather, my dad's dad, was the youngest of 10. And many of my other grandfathers' siblings were still alive throughout most of my life. In fact, I started out life with 4 grandparents, my full complement of grandparents, and I had extra grandparents. I had 2 great-grandparents that I knew personally. And so over the years, I've been to a lot of funerals of older relatives. Some of you don't even have that many relatives. I think to myself now that Aunt Sarah has passed and my dad has passed, that I only have 4 aunts left on that side of the family. And then I laugh because most people don't even start out with 4 aunts on one side of the family. And now I'm finally down to 4 aunts on that side. And their husbands, of course, whom we love, and my first cousins and everything. But it, a grandparent leaves one kind of hole. A great uncle that you never really saw much or maybe didn't even know leaves a different kind of hole, or maybe even no hole at all, And Noella would like to share now. She has nothing but raspberries to share, so we're just going to move on from that. But, your grandparent goes. And I, like I said, I was so fortunate to have them. And it leaves a hole in your life. Some grandparents more than others, depending on how often you saw them, depending on what a part of they were in your life, depending on whether they said things that encouraged you or discouraged you throughout your life, and whether or not they made an impact for good or for better. It leaves a certain kind of hole in your life. And then if you've lost a parent, you know what this is like. You lose a parent, and all of a sudden, now since I do foster care, I always think of the parents that aren't in people's lives and everything. But for most of us, that's a big gaping hole. And for me, I don't know if this is psychological, but I always saw it as being right here. Just if I don't look that way, I don't see the big gaping hole in my life. But my dad has left in you. And every once in a while, though, you've got to turn and you look at it, though, and you think about it, and you think about all the things that you're not going to hear him say again. Some of them kind of glad you're not going to hear him say again. But I mean, that's just life, right? And then over time, you learn to miss that too. And when it first happens, you don't know how to react. In fact, that's my thing, is like, am I sad? Am I any other kind of emotion? No. It's like there isn't an emotion to call this. There's just the hole. There's just the hole. And you just, over time, you learn how to deal, it starts to fill in with other people maybe a little bit, and you start to you take time to analyze parts of it when you have time to yourself, and that big hole is there. And I've said all of that so that we can relate to Mary, the Mary who is at the tomb in our story. And think about the other disciples. When they saw Jesus die on the cross, what kind of hole did that leave in their lives? I mean, so Jesus was not a parent who had raised them. In fact, as best as we can tell, for most of them, they had known Jesus 3 years tops. But what a 3 years. You ever have a week or a month that seems to last longer, make a bigger impression on your life than any other time of your life, I think about when I went on my first mission trip at the age of 16 years old. My dad took our family of 4, and we met up with these crazy people from First Baptist Paris named Mark and Bonnie Carter. Mark was the music leader there at First Baptist Paris, and they were partnered with a church that was near the church we were partnered with there in the former Soviet Union. And we spent a week and a half with these people. I mean, a separate bedroom, but same house usually. And we got to know them so well. And then many years later, Bonnie's the executive director of WMU, and she calls me up because we're at every single thing related to Children in Action and says, would you like to be the state RA guy? And so now I get to see Bonnie all the time again. And that week and a half, we know people like Mark and Bonnie so much better than we know so many other people that we've known for years after spending a week and a half right there. And what about the year that I got married? We got engaged in April, and we planned for a February wedding. And my mom and dad said, why are you waiting that long? Well, I thought it was obvious. I mean, you've got to save up enough money to pay for all the white doves and the fireworks and the flowing train that goes 20 feet. And just, your wedding is supposed to be about twice as expensive as your entire marriage, right? That's what the Bible says, right? Where? Oh, do you mean our culture must have gotten that from somewhere else? Being at my baby cousin's wedding last night, I was not looking forward to 2 grown daughters and paying for, anyways. Yeah, it was like, oh my gosh. But then I realized how awesome Ashley is going to be at planning those. So I'm kind of looking forward to it now. But anyways, we got engaged in April. And we decided based on my parents' advice, well, let's have a fall wedding instead. Let's do October. And then it's a good thing we weren't getting married in February, because in February I was driving from St. Louis to here to preach In View of a Call, or to preach, before I came to preach In View of a Call. And then we moved here when we had been married a grand total of 6 months. And then by June, Devin came to live with us. That was 8 months of marriage. So my first year of marriage is like, it's so memorable. All these things happen. Boom, 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 boom. For the followers of Jesus, they met someone so incredible, and it changed their lives. Mary Magdalene, now I know there's some confusion about all the different Marys in the Bible. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You remember Moses' sister Miriam? Yeah. You have a daughter. You can't name her Moses. What do you name her? You name her after Moses' sister, who was also a very important figure. So there's Marys galore in first century Judea and Galilee, right? And you see that in the Bible. There's some confusion in our modern, we've always been told that Mary, who is the sister of Lazarus, is the Mary who is Mary Magdalene, and she was a prostitute, and then the Da Vinci Code came out and convinced everybody that not only was she all of those things, but she was married to Jesus of all things, and that's not in the Bible at all, and that they had children, and we've got to find these children because they're somehow important, and they're not paying attention to Christianity. We're all children of God if we believe in Jesus, right? You don't have to be descended from Jesus. That's ridiculous. That's why Jesus didn't have any descendants. It wasn't important. He was a man like us, and we assume they had all those same temptations as far as sexual stuff, but that being married was not a part of his mission. He came to die. So anyways, I got off on a little rant there, but Mary Magdalene is specifically pointed out in the scripture as being a woman who had 7 demons cast out of her. Mary of Bethany was probably a different Mary, who was the Mary that was the sister of Lazarus, saw her brother raised from the dead. And even before that, Jesus had made such a huge impression on her that she forgot all about helping her sister serve food and drinks whenever Jesus came over, and she's just sitting at the feet of Jesus listening to him talk, And Peter and Andrew and James and John were fishermen. And Jesus came to them and said, I will make it so that you are fishing for men, that you are fishing for people. We will catch people for the kingdom of God. And they left their trade for this man. And they followed him around. They became leaders in his organization. And all of these people's, their lives have been wrapped up in this person, Jesus, and his movement and everything. And they had that expectation growing up as good Jewish boys and girls that someday the Messiah will come and he will free us from oppression. So not only did they meet the most incredible man they'd ever met, not only did the words that he spoke stir up in their hearts, not only did they see him, especially Mary Magdalene, who had 7 demons cast out. Wow, there's a guy who changed your life, right? But they had that expectation, this is the Messiah. He's going to lead us in a revolution. And not only were they expecting Jesus to help them overthrow the Roman government, but Jesus was standing up to someone that I think surprised them a little bit, the religious rulers. And those religious rulers, maybe you would have a lot of respect for them, but they, let's face it, they've got all their ducks in a row and they're constantly pointing out how you don't. But Jesus was standing up to them, and he'd go in and he'd cleanse the temple, and you guys aren't the true leaders, and you guys aren't... Wow, you like being part of the revolution. This is going to be awesome. And then in a week, it changed. In 1 week, it changed. In fact, in less than a week, it changed. Because at the beginning of the week, they are entering Jerusalem triumphantly. Jesus miraculously provides for a donkey for himself to ride on, and people are throwing down their coats, and they're cutting down the palms and making a red carpet for Jesus, so to speak, for him to ride on this donkey to triumphantly enter Jerusalem, and everyone's excited, and Jesus goes and cleanses the temple, and everyone's excited, and he's teaching parables where the Pharisees and the Sadducees are all bad guys in the parables, and all the Pharisees and Sadducees are sitting on the back row. Mark Lowry would say they look like a bunch of Baptist deacons, just angry about what's going on. I don't like this new young guy, and I know my deacons know the Bible well enough they won't get offended, but Mark Lowry always said they look like they've been sucking oatmeal through a gas pipe, but they're sitting on the back there. They're the old guard, and they know Jesus has singled them out. Heaven forbid a preacher ever single anybody out. Jesus has singled them out. But man, get on board the revolution. Here it comes, here it comes. And then the bad guys win. And then the bad guys win. Because they come at night and they arrest Jesus and they carry him off. And they have to force him through some kind of trial where he is still pretty much found innocent, but they finally find something that they seem to think sticks, which is amazing to me. That trial should not have taken that long. But they really had a hard time finding anything that would stick. And finally, and without the authority to condemn him to death themselves, not wanting it to be a stoning where you can get away with that kind of thing, but a public execution, they take him to the Roman emperor. The Roman emperor, not the emperor, but the local Roman governor. He doesn't find anything deserving of death, but he's got a political calculation to make here. And in order to stop myself from rambling, you know the rest of the story. Jesus is taken, publicly beaten, and that's not enough for the bloodthirsty crowd, so he is taken and he is given a cross to carry, and by this point he can't even do that. And it was probably just a cross beam, and it was probably a lot of weight for anybody. But he is so badly beaten he can't do it. They get someone else to carry it. That guy's nervous. You will remember that I'm not the guy that gets crucified when we get to where we're going, right? And they nail Jesus to a cross publicly, and he dies publicly, and he is a condemned criminal. And crucifixion happens on an upright pole so that everyone can see you. And the message from the Roman Empire is, if you don't behave, we will do this to you. And of course, outside of our modern age and our modern Western world, shame is such a big deal. And so it was public, it was shameful, it was terrible, and there was no denying it. I don't want to be offensive necessarily to other religions. There's lots of different kinds of Muslim in the world, but they revere Jesus as just a prophet. And they do say that, yes, people saw him alive after he was crucified because he didn't really die on the cross. He fainted, and it looked like he had died, but they were able to revive him later. And that is why people have accounts of him being seen. But the account in the Bible is that these professional killers, these Roman soldiers, know what a corpse bleeds like. And they stuck a spear in him, and he bled like a corpse, not like a living person. Blood mixed with water came out, and he was dead. He was dead. He was dead as a doornail. He was all of these things. And under normal circumstances, that means the revolution is over. Okay? All of your hopes and dreams for 3 years, everything that you thought you learned about the kingdom of God, it is over. Whenever this happens to a criminal, it is because the state is stronger than the criminal. Otherwise, the criminal would run the state. And Jesus apparently was not powerful enough and not strong enough to stop this from happening. The revolution is over. And they're going through mourning. The Sabbath day was coming up, and not just any Sabbath day, but the first holy day of the annual Passover feast. No matter which day of the week it fell on, it would be a Sabbath day. I believe that in this year, particularly, it fell on an actual Sabbath day, a weekly Sabbath day, Saturday. And so that there is some confusion in the Bible. But anyways, Jesus dies on the day of preparation. You're supposed to get your house free of leavened bread, and you're supposed to be ready to enjoy this festival, this Passover festival. And Jesus dies like a Passover lamb on that day of preparation. And they want to get his body. It's shameful to have this criminal hanging, especially if you loved him, which everyone who buried Jesus did. Shameful to have him up there. The Old Testament said, "Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree." So next time you watch a Western and they hang a cattle rustler, it's not just an execution in order to stop him from living, but it is a shameful thing to hang in a tree. That was established when God gave the law of Moses. And this isn't a hanging from a tree, but a cross is kind of like a tree, and he is hanging there on it for all the world to see. And in order to keep the Sabbath, they rush to get his body down. They put him in a tomb. They wrap up the body. There's a lot of ancient world embalming to do, but they don't have time for it now because they've got to take the next day off as the Sabbath. And then what happens? John chapter 20, starting in verse 1. Now on the first day of the week, Sabbath is past. There's a new week. There's the first day of the week, a work day. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene, whom you'll remember 7 demons was cast out of by Jesus, came to the tomb early, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Keep in mind, this is a cave doorway large enough for you to walk in comfortably, and a stone large enough to cover it. How many men would it take to move such a stone? Verse 2, so she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. By the way, this disciple whom Jesus loved shows up again and again in the Gospel according to John, and we have assumed for centuries that it's just John's way of referring to himself in his own written Gospel. And said to them, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, pardon me, and we do not know where they have laid him. So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first, and stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in. He saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to their home. So we get a story here about Mary Magdalene finds the empty tomb. Now, in the way the other versions in the gospel tell it is women come to the tomb and they see two angels who explain Jesus is not here, he is risen. That is apparently a shortened version because Mary comes by herself at first. And this first time she doesn't see anything. All she sees is a rolled away tomb and Jesus not inside. A rolled away tombstone, an open tomb. No Jesus inside. In fact, she is concerned that someone has come and moved the body. Very disrespectful. And if you'll recall, the authorities hear that Jesus is gone, and they say the disciples must have come and stolen the body because he said he would rise again. And so now they've come to steal the body, and they're going to tell everyone, oh, look, he did rise again. And we still get this lie today. Everyone's just lying about it. Everyone just faked it. But Mary Magdalene is concerned that not only was it bad enough that they publicly crucified Jesus, but now they've moved his body for whatever political reason that they thought up. And she runs back. She doesn't know who else to run to. She runs to the leaders, Peter and John. And they run there. And there's a bit of an aside here. We think one of the main reasons we think that the beloved disciple is John is because we have all these details that the beloved disciple was there to see. So how else would we know? How else would we know? The younger, John was the youngest. In fact, so many of the disciples were probably so young, still learning the trade from their father, that, and only Peter is identified as being over 30, along with Jesus when they paid the temple tax. That it's possible that this is a young band of brothers, and John's even younger than the rest of them. He's like, I don't know, everybody's kid brother, 15, 13, I don't know. But he's definitely younger because he reaches the tomb first, right? We know what that's like, right? But he doesn't go in. He waits for Peter. Peter goes in. Peter has never found a den of lions he doesn't want to run headlong into. And so he rushes in, ready to just, I don't know, he doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's going to do something because that's Peter. He does things. And he goes in and he investigates. Now, if they've stolen the body of Jesus, good grief, why would you unwrap it? That's disgusting. You leave that on there. You're going to carry the body somewhere else. You leave that on there. And especially if they took off the face cloth, why would they fold it? What is going on here? So, flipped my page back and lost my place. Peter and John. Now, John says he saw all this and he believed. It began to turn over in his mind. John always understands first. Peter always acts first, but John always understands first. They don't know what else to do. They've investigated and they go home. Verse 11, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. And they said to her, Woman, why are you weeping? She said to them, They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. I would like to know why she didn't freak out about two angelic men that were sitting inside the tomb that were not there when Peter and John were there. But anyways, I guess I can ask that question when I get to heaven. Is she that distraught, you think? It's hard to lose somebody. That was my whole introduction. It's hard to lose somebody, right? Why are you weeping? I'm weeping because his body's gone. Stupid. She turns around, and of course, there's Jesus but she did not know that it was Jesus. Verse 15, Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he had said these things to her. This is difficult to preach because this is a happening that is so incredible that it is difficult to imagine. You know, life without my father now was something I could never imagine before. In fact, I didn't, because I was convinced he was going to live to be 95 and that I was going to have to put up with him for that long. And I wasn't even thrilled about it. But to see someone that you saw die, walking around, how do I tell this story? I've mentioned, I think about a year ago I mentioned this, so I'll mention it again. There's a movie out called Risen. And you know, Christian movies, they're a mixed bag. I like movies, so I don't like all Christian movies. And I was with that movie because this Roman soldier is starting to do this forensic thing. If you like CSI and all those type of shows, you know, where they put together all the stuff, a little bit of Matlock, a little bit of Perry Mason. He's piecing together, but this man has been seen alive. And he was standing there when Jesus got pierced with the spear. And then what ruins the whole movie is he's only halfway through building his case, and he walks into a room and Jesus is just sitting there talking to his disciples. Blows his whole investigation away. And I thought, oh man, come on. I was enjoying that. What a plot twist. Have him meet Jesus later. Let him figure it out. Oh, well, whatever. They don't call me when they make movies, so. How are we supposed to take this? Mary is overjoyed. And I know we're Baptists, but maybe we can understand about being overjoyed, right? He's alive. He's there. She doesn't even recognize him. And nobody does until he does something like, and he says her name. She realizes, I'm supposed to know this guy, and she recognizes him. And he says something that has been kind of taken out of context. Some translations say, "Don't touch me, because I haven't been to the Father." And giving people this idea that, oh, I rose out of the ground, but I haven't been up into heaven yet. And some people even throw in this whole story of Jesus going into hell and beating up the devil and pulling all the righteous dead from the Old Testament out of hell and leading them to heaven and stuff. And I don't necessarily, we can debate that later if you really want to. Not on Mother's Day, though. We're supposed to be nice on Mother's Day. But I don't necessarily buy into all of that. I get more of the idea here. The reason it says, "Do not cling to me," she's not going to let him go. The risen Christ has things to do. And this woman is just, "You're back. You're alive. I don't even care how this happened." He's alive. Someone who's meant so much to you for 3 years of your life. Someone who cast 7 demons out of you. Someone who was your entire hope for the future. He didn't lose at the cross. Killing him was something that was a part of his plan all along. And as societies and empires and nations and presidents and kings come and go, they all take a turn at trying to stamp out Jesus and crucify Jesus. And Marx tried. And people have taken Marx's dream and tried. No. We will provide everything. And the only reason everyone has ever tried to convince you of religion before was to control you. Hear that today? It's been over 100 years and we can't bury Marx yet. He must have rose from the dead too. I don't know. I don't like Marx. If there was ever an Antichrist, anyways, everybody that's college educated and respects Marx, I don't know. They need to go back to school or something. But they need to just learn their history and how it's been tried all over the world. And you say it's about the economy. It is not about the economy, because Marx knew that you had to get the church out of the way first before we could finally fix everything that is wrong with society. You know what's wrong with society? Sin. And do you know who sins? People. And so there is no society that is ever going to be fixed aside from getting rid of all the people out of it. And if you study your history, even before Marxism, there were emperors who decided that they needed to kill enough people to get everyone afraid of them so that we could finally have the empire that we want. And then Marx comes along and says, if we would just kill Jesus and religion and the opioid of the masses, then we could fix it. Because the only reason people steal is because they're hungry. Wow, I was not looking for a political sermon this morning. It's just kind of where it went. People have tried to kill Jesus. People try to kill the movement of Jesus. Which means to me that they did not read the book very carefully. Because killing Jesus doesn't do anything to stop Jesus. And we can whine and we can moan after every political year, every election year, that we didn't get our way. But guess what? Doesn't matter. Here comes Jesus. And ultimately, should even America fall, heaven forbid, it's not going to stop Jesus. They thought it was going to stop Jesus when the Roman Empire fell. Here we are hundreds of years later. Didn't stop Jesus at all. He even spread through the Dark Ages. And Mary is overjoyed, not just because the movement is back on, but because her friend is back in her arms. Jesus even has to tell her to let go. I want all of us converted to those two levels. Number one, the movement is still on. Killing Jesus didn't stop the movement. The religious leaders who look down on everyone else, we still stand against them. The Roman Empire can't stop us. Whatever evil empire that runs the world cannot stop us. And number two, I want you to greet the resurrection of Jesus Christ like Mary did on a personal level. Your friend Jesus is alive. And I always kind of felt bad for Lazarus. Poor guy had to go die of something else eventually after getting raised from the tomb by Jesus. But Jesus rose from the dead, and he is resurrected. He is in his eternal state. Jesus did not eventually die of old age after surviving the cross. Jesus is still alive over 2,000 years later. And Jesus wants to live in your heart. And Jesus wants you to take him to live in other people's hearts. And Jesus is alive. And because he has defeated death, if we belong to him, we have also defeated death. And death is just a doorway. And that's why all of this is so important, because you've got to understand, if Easter's not a huge deal to you, if resurrection from the dead is not a huge deal to you, I don't know what to tell you, because everyone dies. Everyone dies. My own father's death had me thinking about, what if Elsie only has me till she's 38? How long does that give me to have left? And what should I teach her before then? Oh my gosh. But everyone's going to die. And yet death, the ultimate enemy of everyone who eventually chases us down. I like fantasy novels, and I love it when they have death as a character in their fantasy novel. He's like the world's best accountant because he doesn't miss anyone, right? So he's like crazy good at math and accountancy and ledgers. But Jesus defeated death. Jesus defeated. He's coming for us all, but Jesus is defeated. We laugh in his face. And we know that we will go to be with the Lord forever. And we will go to be with our friend, Jesus, forever. And whenever Jesus comes back to get us, should we all live that long, it will be the return of our friend, whom we miss. We have him with us, but yet we miss him. And so the focus of everything, the focus of human history, the focus of the whole Bible is Jesus. And the most triumphant thing about Jesus is that he lives. He lives and has conquered death and the grave, and we can live too. Someday we will be face to face with him. So that is the song that we are going to stand and sing now for our invitation. Go ahead and stand. If you don't know Jesus, I encourage you today, you can meet Jesus. And if you've been, I said stand, folks. I don't know what everybody's so confused about. Thanks for that vote of confidence. Now I know nobody's listening. All right. It's like he doesn't have his guitar in his hand yet. What's going on? If you don't know Jesus, this is very important. There is coming a judgment, because you're not just standing there neutral until you decide to sin or go with the devil or whatever. No. We are born into rebellion against God. You may think that, I've got no problem with God, but in reality, you set up your life out of selfishness and serving of yourself. And even when you want to be selfless and serve others, it's many times so we can look good ourselves. But Jesus has come to save you from all that. Turn around. Stop running from God and run to God. Embrace him. He doesn't have to be your enemy anymore, because he paid for the reconciliation that you can come back to God and you can enjoy being with him. Someday we will be with him.